My 19-year-old brother used his psychology class hypnosis skills to make our sister give him her allowance and mom get headaches after family meetings. Then I found his notebooks with detailed records of every time he'd put us in trances, including videos of him practicing on my 12-year-old sister while she slept. I always thought my older brother Daniel was just weird. He was 19 and I was 12, and he'd gotten super into hypnosis after some psych class. He'd do these dumb party tricks, making his friends act like chickens or whatever. Mom and Dad thought it was hilarious. Daniel kept saying he wanted to be a therapist, and this was practice. He even helped Dad quit smoking, so everyone thought he was like amazing. But something felt off about Daniel. I'd have these conversations I couldn't really remember. Like I'd tell my friend Maya that Daniel's girlfriend was annoying. Then the next day I'd feel super guilty about it for no reason. Or my sister Sophie would randomly give Daniel her allowance, and when I'd ask her why, she'd be like, I don't know, I just wanted to. It was weird. Everything changed on this random Thursday after dinner. I was in Daniel's room trying to steal his charger when I knocked over his psych textbook. All these index cards fell out. They weren't notes for class. Each card had our names and creepy stuff written on them. Mine said, for memory fog, touch nose and say anyway. Sophie's said, money release, snap twice. My hands were literally shaking. That night, I waited till Daniel left for his dumb job at the movie theater. I snuck back in and almost puked when I found his notebooks. He had one for each of us. Mine went back a whole year. Every page had dates and gross notes like, successfully implanted guilt trigger about girlfriend, and Liam forgot argument about chores, level 4, trance achieved. He'd been hypnotizing me, and I didn't even know. The next morning, I found Daniel in the kitchen making coffee. I found your notebooks, I said. I was trying not to cry. Daniel just smiled at me. What notebooks, buddy? Then he touched his nose. Anyway, you should get ready for school. Stop it. I backed away from him. I know what you're doing. You can't hypnotize me anymore. He actually laughed. Hypnotize you? Come on, Liam. I only do that stuff at parties. You're being paranoid. I told Mom and Dad after school. Daniel put on this whole confused act. He showed them his actual homework and said the cards were for a class project. He was so good at lying. Mom and Dad totally bought it. They always took Daniel's side, but Daniel got way worse after that. At dinner, he'd use these trigger words to make Sophie tired, so she'd go to bed and he could eat her dessert. He'd make me forget stuff I was mad about by doing his stupid hand gestures while we talked. The scariest part was not knowing what else he'd made us forget. If I didn't do his chores, he'd hypnotize me into thinking I'd already said yes. If Sophie caught him sneaking out, he'd make her forget she saw him. We started writing everything down just to remember stuff, but even then, there were these weird gaps. Then Friday night, I woke up, and Daniel was sitting on my bed with his stupid pen light, swinging it in front of my face. You're getting sleepy, Liam. So very sleepy. I sat up fast. Stop! I'm awake! I know what you're doing. He didn't even care that I caught him. You're dreaming this. Tomorrow you won't remember, just like all the other times. That's when I realized how many times he'd probably done this. I told Sophie everything the next day. She freaked out and tore apart her room. She found this creepy voice recorder under her bed with hours of Daniel talking while she was asleep, telling her to give him money and forget things. We started putting together all the stuff we'd forgotten. Fights that ended with us saying sorry for no reason, agreeing to stuff we hated, blank spots after hanging out with Daniel. We couldn't tell Mom and Dad again. They'd just believe Daniel. So we called Aunt Jennifer. She's Mom's sister and a social worker. Sophie was crying so hard on the phone. Aunt Jennifer came over that same day while Daniel was at work. She made Mom and Dad listen while we showed them everything. The cops came like an hour later. They found so much sick stuff in Daniel's room. Books on covert hypnosis, recordings of us sleeping while he talked, notebooks full of every time he'd messed with our heads. The cop said it was assault. He said it was abuse. Daniel tried to say it was all for school, but the cops found these gross online forums where he'd been bragging about controlling us. He'd posted actual videos of Sophie under hypnosis doing embarrassing stuff, or so we thought, because that's when I saw something so sickening, I felt my organs shiver. The laptop screen showed Sophie in her pajamas, sitting on her bed with glazed eyes. Daniel's voice came through the speakers, calm and steady. You deserve to be punished for being mean to me. Say it. Sophie's mouth moved mechanically. I deserve to be punished. The timestamp at the bottom made my stomach drop. Last month, when she had that stomach flu and stayed home from school for 3 days, Officer Martinez reached over and closed the laptop quickly, but not before I saw Sophie start crying in the video while still repeating those awful words. My sister's vacant expression burned into my brain. Martinez looked at me with concern, then back at the screen. Through the living room window, I watched Daniel's car pull into the driveway. He got out carrying his backpack from work, probably expecting a normal evening at home. The second he saw the police cars, his whole body went rigid. His backpack slipped from his shoulder and hit the ground hard. The zipper burst open, spilling out several pendants on chains and a notebook with advanced subjects, workplace, written in his neat handwriting. Our eyes met through the glass. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear? Anger? Then his expression went completely blank, like he'd flipped a switch. Officer Martinez was already heading outside. Daniel straightened his shoulders as Martinez approached. Other neighbors had started coming out of their houses, phones already in their hands. Mrs. Chen from next door was recording everything. Daniel noticed the cameras and seemed to stand even taller. My brother has always been jealous of me, Daniel announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. His voice carried that same calm authority he used during his hypnosis sessions. Ask our parents about how he acted out after our uncle died. He makes up stories for attention. Mom had been sitting at the kitchen table, but suddenly she grabbed her head. Oh God, she whispered. The headaches. I always got headaches after our family meetings. Her face went pale as the realization hit her. He called them family meetings, said we needed to communicate better after. She trailed off, pressing her palms against her temples. Dad was staring at a paper he'd he'd pulled from his filing cabinet. His hands shook slightly. This contract. I signed this contract giving Daniel my car for his birthday. I don't remember signing this. He looked up at us, confusion and horror mixing on his face. I thought I decided to give it to him because he was doing so well in school, but I don't remember making that decision. Sophie had been upstairs packing a bag. She came down carrying her stuffed elephant, the one she'd had since she was 3. There's another recorder, she said quietly, under my bed. It matches the one the police already took. Her voice cracked. I can't sleep in that room. He was in there while I was sleeping. Can I please stay at Aunt Jennifer's? Please? I looked between my traumatized parents and my terrified sister. Mom was still holding her head, and Dad kept staring at that contract like it might explain everything. Sophie needed someone with her, but leaving our parents alone felt wrong too. I'll go with Sophie, I decided. The words came out before I fully thought them through. Sophie grabbed my hand immediately, squeezing it tight. As we headed upstairs to pack my things, I heard Mom in the bathroom. The door was closed, but her crying came through clearly. Each sob made my chest feel tighter. I'd made my choice, but the guilt sat heavy in my stomach. My phone buzzed with 3 different notifications at once. Dad's boss was calling him. Sophie's school had sent an emergency meeting request. Daniel's theater manager was texting Mom, defending Daniel and calling this all a misunderstanding. Dad answered his work call in the hallway. I could hear him trying to explain why he'd been acting strange lately. Then his voice got quieter. The office party? Yes, Daniel was there. He did some demonstrations. Why? A long pause. What do you mean the Morrison contract might be invalid? I was completely clear-headed when I signed. Another pause. Influenced? What are you talking about? Ashley showed up at our door, just as the police were loading evidence into their van. Daniel's girlfriend looked destroyed. Her face was blotchy from crying, and she clutched her phone like a lifeline. She pushed past Aunt Jennifer and found me in the hallway. This is wrong, she insisted, showing me her phone screen. Text after text from Daniel filled it. Messages about helping her with her anxiety, checking if she was okay, reminding her about her therapy appointments. He only wanted to help people. He helped me through my panic attacks. Look at these messages. Does this seem like someone who would hurt his family? Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs. He helped me with math homework, she said softly. Her forehead creased with confusion. He was patient. He was nice. That was real, wasn't it? Some of it had to be real. The memory hit me suddenly. Daniel in his room last week talking on the phone. The backup files are secure, he'd said. Cloud storage is beautiful. Our family shared a cloud account. We all had the password. If Daniel had uploaded things there, the police might not know about it. My phone rang. The principal's voice was tight with forced calm. Liam, I need to speak with your parents. The news about Daniel has spread through social media. There's something deeply unsettling about how Daniel touched his nose and said, anyway, right when Liam confronted him. That's exactly the trigger from those index cards, which makes me wonder if he was testing whether it still worked on his brother. We're dealing with some situations at school, and I need to make them aware that mandatory reporting protocols may require us to contact Child Protective Services. The guidance counselor from Sophie's high school called next. Sophie needed her anxiety medication refilled, but Daniel was listed as her emergency contact. He'd been the one helping her manage her panic attacks. They needed his signature, or they'd have to start the prescription process all over again with a new doctor. My old therapy records somehow ended up in the pile of evidence. I hadn't even known Mom kept them. The therapist's notes from after Uncle died were brutal to read. Patient shows tendency toward elaborate fantasies, creates detailed false memories as coping mechanism. Every word felt like ammunition Daniel's lawyer could use against us. The family group chat became a minefield. Daniel's lawyer had already screenshotted everything. Old messages where I called Daniel the coolest brother ever after he'd helped me with a school project. Sophie joking about being hypnotized to clean her room. Mom thanking Daniel for being such a responsible oldest child. Each normal family message now looked sinister in context. I'd spent hours going through Daniel's Instagram, trying to find evidence. The court-appointed psychologist called it obsessive behavior in her preliminary notes. She wrote that I showed signs of fixation and potentially unhealthy focus on sibling rivalry. That night, Sophie tried to watch Netflix to calm down. Her profile picture had been changed to spiral eyes. Every profile had been altered. Daniel still had access to our streaming accounts. Such a small thing, but Sophie started shaking when she saw it. 3 nights without proper sleep caught up with me during the CPS interview. My eyes kept closing while the investigator asked questions. She made notes about apparent exhaustion or possible substance use, even though I tried to explain about the nightmares. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel sitting on my bed with that pen light. Dad's brother called while we were at Aunt Jennifer's. I could hear my uncle's wife in the background. We can't have our kids around this drama. What if it's genetic? What if there's something wrong with that whole family? My uncle, who'd been at every birthday and holiday since I was born, said he needed to protect his own children and hung up. The youth theater called about my upcoming performance. The director said the family situation was causing disruptions to rehearsals. Other parents had expressed concerns. They were considering replacing me in the show. My one normal activity, the thing that had nothing to do with Daniel, was being taken away too. Daniel's lawyer had obtained a recording. In it, Mom clearly consented to hypnosis for stress relief. She even thanked Daniel afterward, said she felt much better. The lawyer argued this showed a pattern of voluntary participation. How could we claim abuse when we'd asked for his help? My best friend's older brother needed a recommendation letter for a theater program at college. Daniel had promised to write it. Now the brother kept texting me, asking why I was ruining Daniel's life over family drama. He said I needed to stop being selfish and think about how my actions affected other people. The investigation at Dad's work got worse. During the office party, while hypnotized, Dad had apparently shared confidential information about the Morrison project. The company launched an internal investigation. Dad might lose his job job, all because he'd let Daniel do a harmless demonstration to impress his coworkers. Sophie had a breakthrough moment at the pharmacy. She suddenly remembered the difference between a real memory and one Daniel had planted. She got excited, started explaining to the pharmacist how she could tell them apart, but to everyone else, she looked manic. The CPS worker who happened to be there made another note about unstable behavior. The letter from Daniel's lawyer arrived the next morning. We were required to preserve all communications for a potential civil suit. Every text, every email, every social media post. Mom started crying again. How are we supposed to live normally when everything we say might be used against us? Ashley started showing up at Sophie's dance studio the following week. She'd arrive early, wearing Daniel's old theater hoodie, offering to help set up chairs and organize the younger kids. The other parents found her sweet and helpful. They didn't notice how she used the same slow, measured tone Daniel always employed during his demonstrations. Sophie came home from practice looking confused and tired, unable to explain why Ashley's presence bothered her so much. During a family discussion about Sophie's therapy options, Mom insisted Daniel had been there when they first decided Sophie needed help after the bullying incident. Dad swore Daniel was at work that night. I remembered it happening during breakfast, not dinner. We spent an hour arguing about a conversation that each of us remembered completely differently, our certainty making us angrier at each other instead of at Daniel. My old journal turned up in a box Mom had been sorting through. Page after page praised Daniel. One entry from 2 years ago made my stomach turn. Daniel is the best brother ever. I wish I could be just like him when I grow up. He always knows how to fix everything. The handwriting was definitely mine, but I had no memory of feeling that way. The court-appointed psychologist added it to her growing file of evidence about our complicated family dynamics. At Sunday dinner with extended family, my 6-year-old cousin Emma started chanting in a sing-song voice during dessert. Daniel never did anything wrong. Daniel never did anything wrong. The rhythm matched the cadence Daniel used during his hypnosis sessions perfectly. When Aunt Jennifer asked Emma where she learned that, the little girl just smiled and kept eating her ice cream. Our neighbor Mrs. Chen reluctantly shared her Ring doorbell footage with us. The timestamps showed Daniel visiting our house at 3 a.m. multiple times over the past months. We couldn't explain to the investigators why we'd never noticed or questioned these visits without sounding completely paranoid. Every attempt to describe Daniel's methods made us seem more unstable. The family court mediator treated our accusations as deflection. She spent most of our session exploring how Mom and Dad might have failed to provide adequate structure after Uncle's death. The focus shifted from Daniel's manipulation to our parents' grief and its impact on their parenting. They ordered mandatory family therapy sessions that Daniel would eventually be required to attend. I remembered the cloud account password while sitting in Aunt Jennifer's guest room. Sophie's birthday backwards. I'd helped Daniel set it up years ago. My hands shook as I logged in before his lawyer could request access revocation. Hidden among normal family photos was a folder labeled Practice Sessions, Strangers. My throat went dry as I opened it. A theater kid from Daniel's work had posted videos from cast parties on TikTok. I spent hours watching them frame by frame. In one, during what looked like a normal theater warm-up game, Daniel's hand movements matched his hypnosis patterns exactly. The other actors' eyes had that same glassy look I'd seen in Sophie's video. They were all laughing and playing along, having no idea what was really happening. Dr. Coleman, our court-appointed family therapist, filed a report expressing concern about my fixation on proving Daniel's guilt. She noted that I showed signs of obsessive behavior and potentially concerning revenge fantasies. Her report recommended individual therapy for me to address these issues. Another professional who saw me as the problem, not Daniel. I tried recording Daniel's weekly phone call from jail to our parents. The app glitched 3 times, producing only static. When I insisted to Mom that Daniel had used trigger words during the call, she looked at me with exhaustion instead of belief. Without the recording, I just seemed more paranoid, more unstable, more like the troubled kid Daniel had described to the police. Sophie's trauma therapist required both parents present for her disclosure session about the hypnosis abuse. That meant I spent the afternoon alone at Aunt Jennifer's, trying to prepare for my deposition while Sophie finally got to tell her truth to professionals. I paced the empty house, imagining what she might be saying, hoping they'd believe her. Dad's co-worker Catherine had witnessed the office party hypnosis demonstration. She'd seen Dad share confidential information while in a trance, but when HR suggested she focus on her own performance review instead of past social events, she chose job security. Her kid went to the same school as Sophie. She couldn't afford to get involved. Mom noticed it first, how Ashley had started wearing the same perfume Mom always wore. Then came the gestures, the way Ashley tilted her head while listening, how she touched her collarbone when thinking. Even her laugh had shifted to match Mom's. When Mom mentioned it to Dad, he said she was being paranoid. The gaslighting Daniel had started was continuing through Ashley. Daniel's lawyer made an offer through our attorney. If we publicly stated that Daniel's hypnosis practice was a misunderstood therapeutic technique and dropped all accusations of abuse, he'd drop the defamation suit. The lawyer painted it as a generous compromise. We refused, knowing it would invalidate everything we'd been through. Within days, Sophie's school counselor received an anonymous email with video attachments. The videos showed Sophie during various therapy sessions with Daniel, edited to remove context. Without Daniel's voice commanding her, it looked like Sophie was voluntarily participating in embarrassing activities. Sophie's cloud password being her birthday backwards is peak sibling security. Daniel probably cracked that code faster than a fortune cookie. The fact he labeled his creepy folder Practice Sessions, Strangers shows he organized his mind games like a twisted filing system. The school launched their own investigation into our family's dysfunction. The cloud files revealed more than we'd expected. Yes, Daniel had detailed records of hypnotizing us, but the earliest entries showed something else. He'd started after finding Dad's grief counselor's old hypnosis books in the garage. The margins were filled with Daniel's confused notes, mixing therapeutic techniques with control methods. He couldn't tell the difference between helping and manipulating. Both our lawyer and Daniels realized that Uncle had left behind diary entries from when Daniel was younger. He'd noticed Daniel practicing his psychology interests on younger cousins, but never reported it. Uncle had written that he didn't want to make waves in the family during a difficult time. His silence had enabled years of escalation. The evidence painted a complex picture. Yes, Daniel had systematically hypnotized and controlled us, but mixed in were genuine attempts to help Sophie process her bullying trauma. His methods were wrong, invasive, and abusive, but some of his intentions seemed real. It made everything harder to untangle, harder to prosecute, harder to heal from. Aunt Jennifer faced an impossible choice when the social work board reviewed her involvement in our case. Supporting us meant risking her license and career. She'd worked for 15 years to help families like ours. The board suggested she limit her involvement to unofficial advice only. She chose her career, leaving us without our only expert advocate who truly understood what we'd been through. I started documenting everything obsessively, creating notebooks that mirrored Daniel's. Times, dates, conversations, observations. I recorded it all. Mom found my notebooks and broke down crying. I was becoming like Daniel, using his methods to fight him. The realization made me sick, but I couldn't stop. How else could we prove what he'd done? I orchestrated an accidental encounter with Ashley at the coffee shop where she studied. While she worked on her laptop, I sat nearby, making small talk about school and the weather. When she got up for a refill, I glimpsed her screen. An email draft was open with the subject line, "Daniel's techniques to try with the kids at dance." My blood ran cold. The cloud account yielded our most disturbing discovery yet. Videos of Daniel practicing hypnosis on himself, dating back 3 years. In the earliest ones, he seemed genuinely interested in self-improvement and managing his own anxiety. But the progression was clear. What started as self-help slowly warped into methods for controlling others. We watched him lose himself to the very techniques he'd used on us. Daniel's freshman roommate contacted us through Facebook. He claimed Daniel had offered to help with his insomnia, but wanted payment for his testimony. $5,000 to share his story about Daniel's nighttime hypnosis sessions. We couldn't afford it, and paying him would make his testimony worthless anyway. Another dead end. Between fighting the roommate's demands and managing Sophie's therapy schedule, I missed my appointment with the prosecutor. They marked me as an uncooperative witness in their files. One missed meeting, and suddenly, I was unreliable. The system that was supposed to protect us was documenting every stumble as evidence of our instability. The legal bills mounted faster than we'd expected. Mom and Dad discussed taking out a second mortgage while Daniel's commissary account grew from online supporters who believed he was a misunderstood young man interested in psychology. His jail account showed deposits from strangers who'd read about the family trying to destroy a promising therapist's future. The confrontation happened at Daniel's favorite diner. I hadn't planned it, but when I saw him there with his lawyer during a supervised release meeting, years of suppressed anger erupted. I stood up, knocking over my water glass, and started listing every single thing he'd done to us. Other diners pulled out their phones, recording my meltdown. By evening, the video was viral on TikTok, with comments defending that polite young man being harassed by his unstable brother. Mom lost her job at the library the following Monday. The board president, whose daughter worked with Daniel at the theater, cited the ongoing situation affecting workplace serenity. Mom had worked there for 8 years, helping kids find books and running reading programs. Now she was unemployed because of Daniel's connections and influence. We moved in with Aunt Jennifer while Daniel's supporters maintained a vigil on our home sidewalk. They held signs reading, "Free Daniel" and "Stop the Witch Hunt." Sophie couldn't walk to school without passing people who thought her abuser was a victim. We became prisoners while Daniel gained sympathy. Grandma called me sobbing on a Tuesday night. "He's still my grandson," she wept. "This is killing me, Liam. Can't you just forgive him? For the family?" Her health had declined since Daniel's arrest. She was choosing between her grandchildren, and the stress was destroying her. Another casualty of Daniel's actions. My investigation into Daniel's methods led to Ms. Rodriguez, his theater teacher, being questioned about creating an enabling environment. She'd let Daniel lead relaxation exercises before shows, thinking it helped with stage fright. Now she was suspended pending investigation. Her 7-year-old daughter asked why Mommy couldn't direct plays anymore. I'd helped destroy an innocent woman's career. Ms. Rodriguez's husband posted in the parent Facebook group about the witch hunt ruining innocent lives. He shared photos of his daughter crying because her mom couldn't volunteer at school anymore. The comments section filled with parents questioning whether their kids were safe in any after-school program. The damage rippled outward, touching lives that had nothing to do with Daniel's abuse. I kept building our case despite watching Daniel's former mentors and friends suffer from the investigation. Each piece of evidence I uncovered led to another person being questioned, another reputation damaged. But stopping meant letting Daniel win, letting him return to manipulate more people. The guilt of continuing fought with the guilt of stopping. Sophie found me awake at 3 a.m., going through more of Daniel's files. She sat next to me on Aunt Jennifer's couch and asked quietly if Daniel really thought he was helping. The question hung between us. I couldn't answer immediately because part of me wondered the same thing. Had he started with good intentions that got twisted, or was it always about control? At school, I stood in front of the assembly and admitted something I'd never said out loud. After watching Daniel get praise and attention for his hypnosis skills, I'd wished wished I could control people too. I'd envied his ability to make others do what he wanted. The confession felt like ripping off my own skin, but I needed them to understand how seductive that power could be. Evidence surfaced, showing I'd ignored Sophie's early complaints about feeling fuzzy after talking to Daniel. She told me multiple times that something felt wrong, but I'd dismissed it as her being dramatic. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I could have stopped this sooner if I'd just listened to my sister. Daniel's lawyer filed for an expedited hearing, citing prejudicial delay in proceedings. Our lawyer was on a planned vacation with his family. We had 2 weeks to prepare for a hearing that could determine everything, and our legal representation was scrambling to catch up. Daniel's team had planned this timing perfectly. The truth about Daniel's motivations emerged through his own writings. After Uncle died, our family had fallen apart with grief. Daniel, then 16, had discovered hypnosis as a way to fix everyone's pain. He genuinely believed he could make us happy by controlling our sadness. What started as a desperate attempt to hold our family together had warped into something monstrous. I found an old video on Daniel's laptop from right after Uncle's funeral. Daniel, tears streaming down his face, begged me to help him feel normal again. He looked so young, so broken. I'd promised to keep that moment secret, to protect his vulnerability. Now I had to break that promise and show the world his pain, to explain how he'd become what he was. The Liam who'd protected his older brother's secrets had to disappear. In his place stood someone strategic, calculating, willing to expose private family moments for legal advantage. I hated who I was becoming, but saw no other choice. Daniel had created this version of me through his abuse. Ashley made a crucial mistake while trying to show me proof of Daniel's good intentions. She forwarded an email chain that included Daniel's detailed instructions for using hypnosis on the dance studio children. Her face went white when she realized what she'd done. I forwarded it to our lawyer immediately, my hands steady despite my racing heart. Small victories felt hollow when weighed against their cost. Proving Daniel's pattern of abuse meant watching him sob in the courthouse hallway during a break. We made eye contact, and both of us unconsciously touched matching scars on our arms from a childhood accident. For a moment, he was just my big brother again, and I was the little kid who'd worshipped him. Daniel's counterclaim gained traction with the judge. He argued that our parents had neglected his mental health needs after Uncle died, forcing him to find his own coping mechanisms. His lawyer painted him as a troubled young man who'd been failed by the adults who should have helped him. The narrative was shifting from abuser to victim. Everything hinged on Dr. Coleman's upcoming testimony about our family dynamics. She'd observed us for weeks, taken notes on our interactions, interviewed each of us separately. Something feels off about Ashley accidentally showing those dance studio emails. Was she really that careless, or did part of her want someone to know? The timing of Daniel's lawyer filing while theirs was on vacation seems too convenient to be coincidence. Her professional opinion would carry more weight than any evidence we'd gathered. Our future depended on whether she saw the truth through Daniel's careful manipulations. I watched Ashley continue infiltrating Sophie's world at the dance studio. She'd started teaching the younger kids relaxation techniques that looked suspiciously like Daniel's methods. Parents praised her for helping their anxious children feel calmer before recitals. No one else saw the danger in her gentle voice and swinging pendants. The drama club at Daniel's theater split down the middle. Half supported him as an innovative director who'd helped them overcome stage fright. The other half felt violated learning they'd been hypnotized without consent during what they thought were acting exercises. Former friends turned against each other, arguing about consent and intention. The prosecutor explained the harsh reality during our meeting. Without physical harm or financial theft, psychological manipulation was nearly impossible to prosecute effectively. Daniel's actions occupied a legal gray area that existing laws barely addressed. We might prove what he did, but still fail to achieve any meaningful consequences. I reached out to Dad's therapist from after Uncle died, calling in a promise he'd made to help if our family ever needed him. He'd seen how grief had shattered us, how Daniel had tried to step into an impossible role as the family's emotional caretaker. His testimony could provide crucial context, but he would only offer a written statement to protect his practice. The therapist's statement revealed something Dad had never told us. He'd suspected Daniel was practicing hypnosis on family members, but allowed it because Daniel seemed happier when he felt useful. Dad's guilt over enabling Daniel's behavior explained why he'd initially dismissed our concerns. He'd been protecting Daniel out of his own shame. Daniel's former roommate finally agreed to share his evidence without payment. He'd kept Daniel's practice journal as insurance after feeling uneasy about their living situation. The journal revealed Daniel's final months at college, terrified of losing control, hypnotizing more people to manage his anxiety about hypnotizing people. He'd trapped himself in an escalating cycle. Reading Daniel's frantic later entries, I realized he'd been drowning too. Each use of hypnosis made him feel powerful, but also more isolated. He needed control to feel safe, but controlling others pushed them away once they realized what he'd done. He'd created his own prison of manipulation and loneliness. Our family made a difficult decision. We would pursue legal protection while also advocating for Daniel to receive psychiatric help. Punishment alone wouldn't prevent him from hurting others. He needed treatment for whatever had broken inside him after Uncle died. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement that prison wouldn't fix what was wrong with him. Daniel's sworn deposition arrived, claiming he'd only used therapeutic techniques he'd learned from legitimate sources, but his own notebooks contradicted every claim, showing calculated manipulation and detailed records of control. He'd committed perjury in an official document, adding another charge to the growing list. I presented our evidence without the anger I'd carried for months. Each document, each video, each testimony delivered with calm precision. Daniel watched from across across the courtroom, and I saw the moment he realized I wasn't enjoying this. I wasn't seeking revenge anymore, just protection for our family and others he might hurt. The judge's expression shifted as our evidence mounted. The pattern was undeniable: escalating control, calculated manipulation, and a complete disregard for consent. Daniel's lawyer tried to reframe each incident, but the sheer volume of documentation made his arguments sound increasingly desperate. Legal momentum was finally shifting in our favor. Both legal teams prepared for the final hearing that would determine custody arrangements and protection orders. The community held its breath, divided between those who'd seen warning signs and those who'd enabled through silence. Local youth theater programs implemented new oversight policies. Dance studios created consent forms for any relaxation exercises. Daniel's actions had changed how our entire community approached trust. Sophie's recovery showed in small ways. She'd started sleeping through the night without checking for recorders under her bed. She could watch movies without flinching at spiral imagery. But she still insisted on written documentation for every agreement, every plan, every promise. Daniel had stolen her ability to trust memory itself. Mom and Dad began couples counseling to process how Daniel had manipulated their marriage. They discovered dozens of conflicts he'd created and resolved through hypnosis, playing them against each other for his own benefit. Their therapist specialized in cult deprogramming and said our family dynamics resembled those of cult survivors. The final piece of evidence came from Daniel's own files, a video where he practiced his techniques on himself, narrating his process. He described using hypnosis to suppress his own guilt about controlling us. He'd hypnotized himself to believe his actions were therapeutic, creating a feedback loop of self-deception that enabled greater abuse. As we prepared for the hearing, I felt the weight of everything we'd lost. Family relationships severed, careers destroyed, innocence shattered. Daniel had taken so much more than just our free will. He'd stolen our ability to trust, to remember, to feel safe in our own minds. Recovery would take years, if it was even possible. But we'd also found strength we didn't know we had. Sophie's courage in speaking her truth, Mom and Dad's willingness to face their enabling, my determination to protect others from Daniel's manipulation, Aunt Jennifer's careful support within professional boundaries. We'd survived, scarred, but not broken. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made me look older, more credible. Sophie held my hand as we walked into the courthouse. Mom and Dad flanked us, a united front for the first time in months. We were ready to face Daniel one last time and reclaim our story from his control. The therapist's written statement arrived the morning of the hearing. Dad's hands trembled as he read it aloud in the courthouse hallway. The therapist confirmed Dad had mentioned concerns about Daniel's practice sessions, but had rationalized them as harmless sibling bonding. Dad's face crumpled. He'd known something was wrong, but chose to look away because Daniel seemed happier with a purpose after Uncle died. Daniel's former roommate showed up unexpectedly, carrying a worn journal. He'd changed his mind about payment after his own younger brother started showing signs of manipulation by a camp counselor. The journal entries were devastating. Daniel's descent from genuine self-help into calculated control methods, complete with success rates and refinement notes. Each page showed his growing addiction to the power hypnosis gave him. The courtroom filled with a mix of supporters and curious community members. I recognized parents from Sophie's dance studio, theater kids from Daniel's productions, and neighbors who'd witnessed the arrest. Sophie's friend waved at her before her mother pulled her hand down, whispering sharply. The divided community's tension was visible in avoided eye contact and whispered conversations. Both brothers showed the physical toll of recent months. My bitten nails bled at the edges. Daniel had lost weight in jail, his theater confidence replaced by hollow eyes. When our gazes met across the courtroom, we both unconsciously touched matching scars on our forearms from a childhood bike accident. For a heartbeat, he was just my big brother again. The prosecutor presented our evidence methodically, each hypnosis session documented, each manipulation cataloged. The pattern emerged clearly. What started as grief-driven attempts to help had evolved into systematic control. Daniel's own records condemned him, showing calculated escalation and complete disregard for consent. A theater colleague testified reluctantly. She admitted knowing about Daniel's relaxation sessions, but assumed families had agreed to participate in his psychology project. Her voice cracked when she described finding her own name in his practice notes. She'd thought her sudden decision to give him the lead role was her own choice. The judge ordered a recess when Daniel started hyperventilating during the journal authentication. The handwriting expert confirmed every entry matched Daniel's writing patterns. The psychological profile drawn from the entries showed someone who genuinely couldn't distinguish between helping and controlling. Daniel's breakdown wasn't manipulation. It was the collapse of his entire worldview. During the break, I found myself in the bathroom with Daniel's lawyer. He washed his hands silently before speaking. He explained that Daniel truly believed hypnosis was the only thing keeping our family from falling apart after Uncle's death. In Daniel's mind, every session was an act of love. The lawyer's own brother had similar control issues. He was defending Daniel because he understood the fine line between protection and possession. Sophie testified via closed circuit from another room. She detailed the recordings, the hypnosis sessions, the stolen memories, but she also described Daniel teaching her algebra patiently, walking her to school when she was scared of bullies, making her special pancakes on bad days. Her confusion about which brother was real broke everyone in the courtroom. The judge's questions cut through everything. She asked Daniel directly about his methods, his intentions, his understanding of consent. Sophie's split-screen brother situation makes Jekyll and Hyde look like amateur hour. One brother flips pancakes, the other flips memories, and she can't tell which recipe card is real anymore. Daniel's answer answers revealed the depth of his delusion. He still believed he'd been helping us, that our resistance to his control was what caused our family's problems. His inability to recognize the violation made him more dangerous, not less. Dr. Coleman's testimony proved crucial. She'd observed our family dynamics for weeks and concluded that Daniel showed signs of a specific personality disorder exacerbated by unprocessed grief. Without treatment, he would continue these patterns. Prison alone wouldn't stop him from manipulating others. He needed intensive psychiatric intervention. The evidence of perjury emerged when Daniel's sworn deposition was compared to his journals. He'd claimed to use only therapeutic techniques from legitimate sources, but his own notes detailed improvised control methods designed to bypass conscious resistance. The judge's expression hardened as the prosecutor outlined the additional charges. Mom and Dad testified together about discovering the depth of Daniel's manipulation. They described finding conflicts in their marriage that Daniel had created and resolved through hypnosis, playing puppet master with their relationship. Their therapist had compared their experience to cult survivors, the same disorientation, the same difficulty trusting their own memories. Ashley's forwarded email became key evidence. The detailed instructions for hypnotizing dance studio children showed Daniel's methods spreading beyond our family. Parents in the gallery gasped as the prosecutor read Daniel's step-by-step guide for making children more compliant and focused. Ashley sat in the back row, no longer wearing mom's perfume or mimicking her gestures. The community impact testimony revealed the full scope. Youth theater programs had implemented new oversight policies. Dance studios now required consent forms for any relaxation exercises. School counselors had undergone additional training to recognize manipulation signs. Daniel's actions had shattered our community's innocent trust. I took the stand last. Instead of anger, I spoke about understanding. I described watching Daniel's progression from grieving teenager to controlling manipulator. I asked for mandatory psychiatric treatment, not just punishment. Daniel needed help to break the cycle he'd trapped himself in. Despite everything, he was still my brother. The judge's decision came after 2 hours of deliberation. Daniel would serve time, but in a psychiatric facility with mandatory treatment for his personality disorder. The restraining order included provisions for supervised therapy sessions if all parties consented in the future. Sophie would receive specialized trauma therapy for hypnosis abuse. Our parents would continue couples counseling to untangle Daniel's manipulations. Daniel's supporters gradually dispersed as the evidence mounted. The Free Daniel signs disappeared from our home sidewalk. The online fundraising for his defense dried up. People who defended him fell silent as they recognized similar patterns in their own interactions with him. The theater community began its own reckoning with enabling behaviors. Sophie's medication was finally refilled with a new psychiatrist taking over her care. The school removed Daniel from her emergency contacts and implemented new protocols for student mental health support. Her dance studio brought in a child psychologist to assess any lasting impact from Ashley's relaxation techniques. Dad's job remained secure after the company's investigation concluded. While the Morrison contract required renegotiation due to the hypnosis incident, Dad's colleagues rallied around him. They'd seen his dedication for years and recognized him as another victim of Daniel's manipulation. The office implemented new policies about demonstrations at company events. Mom found work at a different library branch. The director there had followed our case and believed in second chances. She started slowly, part-time shelving, but it gave her purpose again. The familiar smell of books and the quiet routine helped her heal. Some days were harder than others, but she was rebuilding. Our family home felt different when we finally returned. Sophie insisted on new locks for her bedroom door. We removed all the recording devices Daniel had hidden. The family photos stayed on the walls, but looking at Daniel's smiling face in them felt like seeing a stranger wearing my brother's skin. Grandma's health stabilized once the legal proceedings ended. She couldn't fully accept what Daniel had done, but she stopped pressuring us to forgive him. She sent cards to Sophie and me, careful not to mention Daniel. The family fracture might never fully heal, but at least the bleeding had stopped. Ms. Rodriguez returned to teaching after the investigation cleared her. The theater program implemented new safeguards, and she became an advocate for consent in performance spaces. Her daughter could watch her direct plays again. Sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting collateral damage, but watching innocence rebuild gave me hope. The drama club found new ways to manage performance anxiety without hypnosis. They brought in legitimate therapists who taught genuine relaxation techniques with full consent and transparency. The divide between Daniel's supporters and victims slowly mended as everyone processed what had happened. 3 months later, I stood outside the psychiatric facility where Daniel was receiving treatment. The therapist had approved a supervised visit. Sophie chose not to come. She wasn't ready. Mom and Dad waited in the car, supporting my decision, but protecting their own boundaries. Daniel looked smaller in the visiting room. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw and uncertain. We didn't speak during that first visit. I simply placed his old psychology textbook on the table between us. Inside the front cover, I'd written a note: "Start over. Do it right this time." Walking back to the car, I felt the weight of everything shifting. Justice wasn't revenge. Sometimes love meant letting someone face consequences while hoping they'd heal. Our family would never be what it was before Daniel's manipulation, but maybe we could build something new from the ruins. Sophie was sleeping without nightmares. Mom and Dad were learning to trust each other again, and I was learning that strength meant knowing when to let go. The drive home was quiet. Sophie had texted asking us to pick up ice cream, her first request for dessert since everything started. It felt like a small victory. We were healing separately, taking different paths toward whatever came next. Daniel's control was broken. Now we had to figure out who we were without it. I've enjoyed sharing my my thoughts and questions with you all. See y'all in the next.